Hi, this is Nahid, and welcome to the video in our Coach Nahid Growth Process series. We've been talking about the obstacles pyramid, and we've been talking about the different levels of the obstacles pyramid. And just in case it's been a while since you've watched the last video, let's give you some context here. So I'm kind of giving you an overview of my entire growth process. And to start with, it's led by my core question, which I'll call my guiding question. And that is, if we're all smart and capable and we have the freedom to create any life we want for ourselves, why are so many of us stuck and unhappy? What that has led to is a mission to clear the path to success for as many people as possible. And in order to clear the path to success, I developed a model called the obstacles model. I went over the obstacles model in our first video, and it has all the different places where you can get stuck, organized into 5 levels. We've gone through the clarity level, which is the top level, and right now we're in the middle of the systems level. So the thing to keep in mind at the systems level of the pyramid is that there are 3 main things that you can think of when you're thinking about where do obstacles show up. And by the same token, not where obstacles show up, but where can I open up new opportunities for myself? So it's at the habits and routines level, it's about personal organization, and it's also about time management. With just about all of my clients, if we can't get the time management piece down and the personal organization piece down, then there is no time to reflect or think about coaching or change. So if you're in a situation where you are running around all day from morning till night, you don't have time to think, then it's really hard to make a change. And if you want to make a change, where you have to hit it first is getting yourself some time and space. Now, for the clients that I've worked with where we started there, as soon as they've gotten that time and space, then they've been able to make incredible progress in other areas. But the clients I've had that have not been able to conquer that first step, which is getting enough time and space to reflect, it's always just running crazy, running crazy, running crazy. And there's no time to do anything other than simply react to what's in front of you in the same old ways that you're used to reacting, because those are the ways that take the least amount of energy, and you have no time to expend extra energy on anything. So time management is huge. And because of that, we have a lot of time management tools. In fact, I would say that time is one of the biggest obstacles to creating the kind of life that you want, to making the kinds of changes that you might want to make in your life. What I've seen is one of the biggest obstacles to creating the life that people want is getting trapped in the life that they have. The life that they had fills so much of their time and energy that there's no way to stop it. There's no way to get out of it. And so the tools in this video are the ones to start with if you're leading a busy life, you want to change it, but every time you think about changing, you're still just trying to get through the days and survive. So I have a whole bunch of tools that I use with my clients to help them overcome the time obstacle. I'll go over a few of them in this video. One is called time blocking. One is called framing focused time. I talk about the Covey time management matrix, which you might already be familiar with. Prioritize using the 80-20 rule and the return on energy tool. You may have used some or all of these tools. This will show how they fit into the bigger picture, and you may want to do them again. Essentially, time blocking is categorizing the different things that you do each day in blocks of times. This example that I have right here is usually one that I use with my managers that I coach, and I have them use this as a template. These 5 categories are pretty common to everybody: focus time, routine work, handling unexpected issues, meetings, and training or mentoring their team. And then they might have a couple of other things that are different, or they might do this slightly differently, but the idea is to keep it to less than 10 categories and to really categorize each type of work you do based on where you have to be mentally. So for example, focus time versus routine work. Routine work is work that you can do even if you're interrupted, that you can still do well even if you're interrupted. Whereas focus time is for work that is going to be completely derailed if you're interrupted. So for me, I use focus time to, for example, write, to create programs, to create videos. If I'm interrupted in the middle of this video, it's going to derail the whole thing. That's focus time. But routine work might be going through your emails, doing some social media posts, that sort of thing. There's meetings and training and mentoring, which is a little bit different from meetings because it has to do with developing our team if we have a team. There's always going to be unexpected issues, and people often don't plan for those. So I usually devote a block of time to handling unexpected issues. That way you can flow more easily through your day, knowing that unexpected issues will arise. You can't predict what they'll be, but you have set aside time so that you can deal with them and be present to them when they come up and they don't derail you. So these are the 5 main categories. And then what they do is they put the categories in their calendar. Typically, we start by getting focus time in there, and then we go from there. Framing focus time is another tool that I use to really help people protect their focus time, because focus time is kind of the most important of all the time blocking categories. Because if you can't do focus time, you can't move yourself ahead in your work. You can't get strategy done. And you can't work on the projects that are actually going to move you forward and require your thought. Framing focus time has to do with people who want to be there for other people. And managers fall into this trap a lot. You know, I have an open door policy. I want to be able to be there for my team all the time. And the funny thing is the managers that are the most concerned with this and are always trying to be there for their team all the time tend to be the most interrupt driven. And paradoxically, they end up not being there for their team as much as the team would like. So when they actually take a block of time each day to not be available to anyone, and to get the focus work done that they need to get, and this isn't just getting expense reports done, this is getting the really important work done, then they do better. But to quell the anxiety around that, usually what I have them do is create times on either side of their focus time to reach out to their team. So for example, one of my managers would come in the morning and circle around to everyone on his team and check in with them and see how they were doing. And then once he got comfortable that everyone was okay and all the open issues had been looked at and that they would be fine for the next 3 hours, he not only assured them that he'd check back with them in a few hours, but he did let them know that he would be in his office focusing between now and 3 hours hence. And that the fact that he would be back in 3 hours would cause most people to not want to interrupt him because they know that they'll be able to talk to him again in a few hours. And so unless it's incredibly urgent, they wouldn't have the need to interrupt him. And that's really how it ends up flowing, is that once you're responsive to your team and they know your schedule and they know when they'll next and they know when they'll next be able to talk to you, they don't interrupt you as much. And so then those managers become less interrupt driven. Now, there are also blocks of time that you put to administrative work and those other things so that you can get all of that stuff done too. But for the most part, getting focus time done is the thing that turns everything around. It's sort of the key step that makes a difference everywhere else. And I have managers that were running around with their heads cut off. Once they got focus time on the calendar and they got their calendar all time blocked, then things started running much more smoothly, and they were able to sit back and think enough to make the next changes that they wanted to make. Another tool I use is obviously not for me. It's Franklin Covey from the 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. It's Covey's time management matrix with the 4 quadrants. You can look this up anywhere on the internet. The most important thing here is that people who are running around with their heads cut off tend to do only urgent things that are right in front of them, which is represented by quadrants 1 and 3. So urgent things, whether they're important or not important, are always going to be dominating the time of interrupt-driven people. But meanwhile, the things that are important but not urgent are getting neglected, and those are the things that cause problems. So just a simple example, looking at the bills that come in every month and making sure that they're paid, or noticing that there's a problem on your credit card or with a medical bill and taking the time to make that phone call. We never have time for stuff like that. But if we have time set aside to handle those issues that are important but not urgent, we protect ourselves from problems that will show up later. Another example of this is exercise, right? It's never urgent that you go exercise, but if you have an exercise routine and that becomes a priority for you, then you avoid all sorts of health problems in the future. So it works for everything. And so what we train people to do is to understand what goes in each quadrant. The two measures are important and urgent. So there's a quadrant for everything: important and urgent, important and non-urgent, non-important and urgent, non-important and non-urgent. People categorize their different tasks into the 4 quadrants. And then the goal is to start putting the important but non-urgent things into routines and habits so that you are doing them more often. And then what happens is, as you do more quadrant 2 activities and you prioritize those, then everything else in your day shrinks and you have less problems coming at you. So you have less urgent tasks coming at your face. And that starts a whole change in your schedule. And so instead of running around frantically dealing with all these crises all the time, there aren't as many crises because you've been proactive and you've prevented a lot of crises through your proactive work. Okay, so your quadrant sizes change the more you work in quadrant 2. And that's one of the key things that we talk about when we work with the Covey matrix. Another tool we use, something that you may have heard about over and over again, is the 80-20 principle. The idea is that 20% of your effort contributes to 80% of your results. So all tasks are not created equal, and how you spend your time is not equal. So if you have a to-do list with everything on it, the order in which you do things does make a difference in your productivity. If you can identify your top 20 or know your 20%, which are the things that are going to get you the furthest and contribute to more of your results, then those are your priorities. They're the things that you do in the beginning of the day. It doesn't mean that you can't do the other things. You have to probably do everything on your to-do list, or most everything on your to-do list, but you do the most important things first. We do a lot of work to help people identify the top 20% and then prioritize on the top 20% and get those things done first. Now, what I've done is I've added on a component to that in my return on energy worksheet, which has you identify your top 20%, but then it has you analyze your tasks based on which tasks energize you and which ones drain you, and add a score in terms of your prioritization. And then we have a whole assessment that leads you to dealing with different types of tasks differently based on how they fall out. So the ones that are high priority and energize you are the ones that you leverage, the ones that you do more of, and you're able to get so much more accomplished that way. There may be some high impact exercises or some high impact tasks that drain the life out of you. So making sales calls is a big one. A lot of people in business development know that reaching out to people directly on the phone is the most important task they can do, but it often scares them, makes them anxious, drains them, and they hate doing it. And there are so many other activities that they would rather do. And often we can make some shifts to make that less draining. But if it's too draining, often it's hard to get done. So that might actually shift lower on the priority list. And there may be some other tasks that shift higher that you can leverage that will get you the same results as if you dragged yourself through a few sales calls every day. So return on energy worksheet not only helps you know your top 20%, but it also takes your energy into consideration, your natural strengths, your natural values, the things that you love to do. That floats up to the top, and the things that just drain the life out of you, that floats to the bottom, and it gets contained in your strategies for containing that as well. So that's really the final tool, I believe, on managing your time. If you learn the time management and productivity tools, but you find you aren't using them, then it's really important to dig deeper. And the digging deeper should ultimately help you resolve the issues with managing time. One of the assessments that I have is your relationship with time assessment. And it helps you identify how resistant you are to managing your time. And so that's really interesting and insightful, and it can help kind of lead you and walk you down the path of the deeper work. There's another tool that you can use to do the deeper work, and that is a trigger log. Now, you may have heard of trigger logs because we use them all the time in my practice, but you can use trigger logs for different things, and you could do a time trigger log, and you could narrow your triggers down to those that have something to do with time. So when you're frustrated because things aren't taking enough time, or you're getting really resentful because you don't have enough time. So any kind of trigger that's happening in your life that has something to do with time, you could choose those triggers and look for patterns there. And that can be a very valuable tool to lead you to the deeper obstacles and help you work through those as well. If you're interested in working more on your own on time management, we have some things in our online learning center. So we have a Getting Time to Focus workbook, and we also have a Power of Routine handout and video in our online learning center. So you're welcome to access those. They can really provide you some additional work if you want to make sure to get started on getting yourself organized and getting on top of your time. Okay, so that's it for the systems level of the pyramid. In our next video, we're going to go down to the relationships level, and we're going to talk about the obstacles there and the tools that we have to overcome the obstacles there. Hope to see you then.